Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to you all to this first webinar series on the halal food market prospects in a post-COVID-2019 environment. I'm very delighted to welcome you today. My name is Ibn Arabi Al-Ghani and I'm the head of product for Salaam Gateway. Today we have the pleasure to welcome a number of hosts to discuss this very hot and important topic, which is the food sector. By far the largest non-financial sector in the global Islamic economy. The webinar will be moderated by our very own managing editor, Amy Abdul Alim, whom will be presenting the agenda for the day. You can expect the webinar to run for around 60 to 90 minutes with presentations by our guest speakers, followed by a Q&A moderated by Amy Abdul Alim. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Amy.
Thank you, Ibn Arabi. Like my colleague said, my name is Amy Abdul Alim, and I've been editor for Salaam Gateway since we launched in 2015. And then since we moved to Dinar Standard last year in September. I want to address one thing first. You all know that we have 4 speakers. On the screen, we only have 3 because we're missing Asma Ahad from IFANCA, who I believe will be joining us in a few minutes. Hopefully, inshallah, Asma, if you can hear us, click the link as a panelist to join us. We'll be here waiting for you. I'm well aware that some of you join in from Asia, where it's already late, as I do. It's about 9 p.m. here in Singapore. And on the other side of the world, people like Adnan Durrani of Saffron Road joins us very early in the morning at about 8 a.m. in the morning. So I hope that we can make this session as meaningful as possible to every one of you across the world. So I think I have the easiest job, actually. Asma is here. Welcome, Asma.
Hi, thank you. I was on. I think I just hadn't linked on the right. I didn't click on the right link, but excited to be here.
Okay, well, I was just introducing everybody. We've just begun, and I was saying that we have 4 speakers, including you. So Asma Ahad is with IFANCA, one of the biggest halal certifiers in the world, and they're based out of Chicago. Barbara Ruiz Bejarano, that's Dr. Barbara Ruiz Bejarano, is representing Instituto Halal in Spain. I think your office is based in Madrid, but you're not based in Madrid.
In Cordoba, but I'm based in Valencia.
Okay, I got that wrong, sorry.
That's fine.
And Adnan Durrani is with Saffron Road, a very, very big halal food producer. And we do have the 4th speaker, who is Rizwan Khalid of Euro Quality Lambs from the UK. I don't see him on my screen, but I think he's there somewhere.
I see him.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I was saying my job as moderator is pretty easy. I'm here to keep time. We only have about 60 minutes, and all of you have, I know, quite a lot of important things to say, and we want everyone to hear what you have to say. We're giving you 10 minutes each. You each have your slides. On the 8th minute, I will nudge you to tell you that you have 2 minutes left. And then we can hand off to the next speaker. According to that agenda, we are going to start off with the 2 halal certifiers. From North America, we go to Europe, and then we stay in Europe with Rizwan from Euro Quality Lambs, and we go back to North America with Adnan Durrani. Before we start, my job is to put things in context for everyone that's on this webinar. Some of you may realize when you read this agenda that all 4 of our speakers are from the Northern Hemisphere. And the majority of the Muslim world live in the Southern Hemisphere. The majority of the Muslim world and the Muslim majority countries are not food producers. The biggest halal exporters are the non-Muslim countries. And these 4 people are representing companies that are behind hundreds of millions of dollars worth of halal certified food. And that's just food. The 2 certifiers you see also are behind non-food products, such as pharmaceuticals and personal care and other things now. We have such fancy things that they want to halal certify. So it is not it is deliberate that the selection of the speakers who represent quite a huge market when it comes to halal foods. With that, I will say again, you each have 10 minutes. I'll let you speak straight away, Asma. And remember, participants, right down there at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A button that you can use to send us questions. We will check on them periodically. We will take your questions at the end of Adnan Durrani's presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all of them. Okay, I'm now going to hand it off to Asma, and Ibn Arabi will be controlling your slides.
Thank you. So my name is Asma, and I'm the Director of Market Development for IFANCA. And today I'm going to start with giving you guys a little bit of background on who IFANCA is. We could go to the next slide. IFANCA is the acronym. IFANCA is an acronym for the Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America, and it was founded in 1982 by a group of concerned scientists. It's a non-governmental organization, NGO, and it's global. We have operations in over 70 countries. And, you know, if I had to say something about IFANCA, I would say that before food security was even coined, probably as a term, or was even made it to common lingo, IFANCA as an organization was addressing food security in North America from the perspective of addressing the concerns and questions of halal consumers, like what is it acceptable for us to eat, or what is the meaning of this complex sounding ingredient, so on and so forth, to make sure that they were meeting the faith-based needs that are required by halal dietary laws. And then the second need that they were addressing from a food security perspective was from global trade. And like Emmy said a little earlier, most Muslim countries are not food producers. So when you're looking to supply food for a global economy, you need to make sure that, especially for countries that are looking for halal foods, that they meet the criteria. And IFANCA has been making sure, has been in partner with industry to make sure that the needs of halal consumers are being met for those two perspectives. And when I talk about food security, I'm talking about from a macronutrient level, like from proteins to other aspects of food nutrients, such as micronutrients, like looking at vitamins and minerals and so on and so forth. So basically, as an organization, we're in the space of educating people as well as other services that are associated with halal, including certification. So hopefully when we talk about, when we go into our response to COVID-19 and what we think the marketplace will look like, it'll make sense what we're doing. So when we look at, we can go to the next slide. So when we're looking at what IFANCA's priorities are, oh, I'm sorry, a little bit more background. I'm jumping ahead. So basically if you look at our organization, we have over 60 employees. We're staffed with over half of our staff are scientists, dietitians, and we specialize in other areas of food science. And we also have several well-heeled religious advisors on our staff. And like I said earlier, our primary focus is to promote halal. It's really to meet the needs of the halal consumer, whether it's through being partners with industry, being partners with educational institutions. We've done a lot of work with leading agricultural universities. We've created an endowment with Texas A&M University, which is an agricultural, it's one of the agricultural hubs here in the US. And what we're doing is we're creating the next generation we're training the next generation of people who are in hospitality, food science, nutrition science, about what halal is. So they're well prepared to address the needs of the halal consumer in the next generation. Now we can go to the next slide. So when we are looking at what is the halal food marketplace going to look like post COVID-19, we really need to understand where the food industry has been. And up to now, what we've seen is the halal food space has seen a steady growth, and it's outpaced growth compared to the rest of the food industry. The halal food industry is in general seen as essential, and and we've seen during the pandemic minimal or delayed disruptions due to the pandemic. Saying that, no one really knows when the dust settles, when this pandemic comes, hopefully comes to an end soon, where everything will fall into place. But what we do know is, being in the food space, food security is an essential concern, and the availability of food is essential to that. And saying that, we're learning in real time where our priorities fall. And one of our first priority is really when we're looking at it, is safety. The safety of our employees are most valuable, and we're learning that our employees are really valuable in terms of where they're placed. And we need to ensure their safety, because that's going to ensure no disruptions in our in the work that we do. So it's probably going to be a tiered response in terms of how we look at how the safety of our employees comes together. We're probably going to phase in people back into the office, phase people back into doing audits globally. And one of the things we've also noticed about our global team is they're the ones who have the ear to the ground. So they understand what needs to happen geographically with where they're at, because COVID-19 might be an emergency in one place, or might be more severe in one place than the other. And so understanding how things are changing in real time, we're really counting on our people on the ground to tell us that. And so that's where the safety of our employees is important, and also understanding what's going on is important to our employees. The second is making sure that we don't disrupt our work, right? So really troubleshooting ahead of time, and really understanding what needs to happen to not disrupt our work, because when we are providing certification, it impacts the availability of essential ingredients and products to places that need to feed their populations. So that's the secondary concern, and we're being proactive. We're looking at alternate ways we could conduct audits, versus if it's virtual, or if there's ways that if our auditors actually absolutely have to go out to the field, do we create what is the right incubation time, what is the right time that the person has to be quarantined. And so those are kind of things that we're troubleshooting. But at the end of the day, if we look at post-COVID-19, what is that going to look like in terms of minimizing disruption? We're going to try our best to troubleshoot, but the science is really going to decide how we manage through the crisis. So we're going to do our best in terms of what we understand, but we're waiting for the experts to tell us really, what is the right way, what are that we need to take to manage our employees and make sure that we don't disrupt the supply chain for food. And finally, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's really, when we're so separated and we're not meeting with people, it could create distance between our, the people that we're working with and people that are essential to our team and ourselves, maybe being in an office and really understanding what needs to get done from a headquarters perspective. So really keeping an ear to the ground, like I said earlier, and managing the talent and understanding who's doing what and what value their insights are adding enables us to really do our job well and be prepared to take on what comes next. So it's hard to say what the marketplace is going to look like after COVID-19. We haven't seen significant disruptions in our work. Factories are still producing products. We're doing some of our work virtually, but at the end of the day, it's a case-by-case basis, and it's very customized. Like we said, Some places in the world are more impacted than others, and they're more cautious. And other places, you know, they're doing business as normal, and they expect you to show up and be there in person. So it's really going to depend. Right now, that's how we're managing it, and we're trying to have foresight in terms of what things might look like in the future.
Thanks, Asma. That's the whole virtual thing and auditing is an interesting thing. Before we went on with this webinar, I emailed all the speakers and said that if you would like to sort of frame your discussion around what you would consider to be a healthy recovery, then you're welcome to do that. And at this point, maybe I do want to ask Asma one question with regards to what a healthy recovery would look like with regards to IFANCA and what you are learning. In terms of that virtual audit, I know of one hotel in Dubai that received a sort of a safety hospitality certification from a very big testing company. And this hotel is the first in the world to get this safety certification, and that they are offering all the audits to be done virtually as well. Seeing that you say that you're learning as this unfolds, what exactly about a virtual audit is vastly different from doing it on the ground? And at this point, can you say that it's something safe for you to do? And have you actually done a virtual audit and given it someone a certification from it?
So, there have been instances where we are able to do our audits virtually. We're actually just developing this technique, and the challenge with virtual audits is, I think in the past, even if it was an idea, I think most people were resistant to it because there was no reason to want a virtual audit, right? Saying that, it depends on the industry that we're working with and our history with them and how much we understand what they're doing. Like if it's a very detailed audit, especially like in the pharmaceutical industry where, we're looking at, how they manufacture a certain very particular ingredient, that takes a lot of steps, as well as understanding situations of cross-contamination. It'll be difficult to do a virtual audit, especially in places where there are ingredients or products that might be of concern for us. But if we've audited and we have a history of working with people, there are certain companies that have moved to only halal products inside their ingredients and products inside their plants. So everything that enters the facility has to be halal certified, from every ingredient to the packaging, so on and so forth. So that enables us, that facilitates the ability to do a virtual audit because you have all the compliance paperwork ahead of time. So it really is going to depend. Again, it's going to be very customized in our ability to do virtual audits, and we're taking it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. At this juncture, I saw someone write in the chat, could the presentations be made available? And we're going to say that they will be made available, and we will send them all out to you after this webinar. Our team will do that. And as well, if it gets to the point where we can't answer all of your questions, the speakers have very generously agreed to answer the questions that we can't take here online after the webinar, and we'll send those responses over to you as well. Having said that, thank you very much, Asma. It sounds a bit scary that you say that you're learning as you go along from a Halal Certifier point of view, but you seem very confident about it. So
it's learning about how to troubleshoot. It's not learning the business and how to, it's learning to work in the same caliber of excellence that we have been working in, while managing the best interest of our employees, managing safety protocol, really understanding the needs of industry. When we work with industry, they're really our partners. We don't, it's not like we go in and give a certification. That we have regular communications with them. It's we work with them, we troubleshoot with them when they get new ingredients, or if they have trouble in the supply chain, if they have supply chain disruptions, we're partners with them. And we have a history of being partners with them. So when we're saying, we're taking it case by case, or we're understanding it. It's because nobody could really say, I don't think, from talking to several people who've been in the industry for a long time, and if you talk to some of the experts, the food supply chain, we haven't identified the disruptions where they are. There might be disruptions, and it really will come from human resources. Like why are there disruptions in the supply chain? It's because of concerns for human resources, the safety of our human resources. So really, when we're saying we're taking a case by case basis, it's because this pandemic has impacted different populations very differently, and geographically it's impacted the world very differently. So, and one day it might be Italy, the next day it might be another country. So really understanding that impact and how we might have to shift the way we work is really on a case-by-case basis. And to make sure that we don't impact the quality of the work that we do.
Okay, from one Halal certifier to another, we're going to bring on Dr. Barbara Ruiz Bejarano from Spain. Dr. Barbara is with Instituto Halal, also a Halal certifier. And I know that she's framed some of her discussion based on what she and Instituto Halal see as a healthy recovery. So Dr. Barbara, over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Well, first I wanted to say I used the healthy recovery theme as a lead for my presentation. So I read the letter written by scientists about healthy recovery, and they basically point out that 4 essential areas of work post-pandemic. One is preparedness, and the second is public health management. The third one is environmental stewardship, and I would add the fourth one would be better practices in trade. Because one of the effects of the pandemic, when everything stopped, 2 things happened. First, of course, the economy is quite resented, but then we also have time to think about how to do things better in the future. I have to say now, my country, starting now the de-escalation and reopening the country and the economic activities, I have the feeling that people are going to forget very quickly. And I also have the feeling that we didn't seize this opportunity fast enough to reap the benefits. So I went quickly through some ideas. First, zoonotic diseases like COVID or SARS or MERS have been around, and most of them can be linked to bad practice in dietary terms, which means we should reflect about what we eat and how we farm animals and so on. And in fact, in China, there were calls for closing the wet markets. Apparently, the COVID-19 originated in one of these. So there is an opportunity for reflection about zoonotic diseases. We had mad cow disease in the whole world, mainly in France and the UK, where hundreds of people died, but thousands of animals have to be killed to stop spreading the disease. And it was due to a human bad practice, which could have been avoided. So good practice leads to a healthier trade, healthier products. So we have to bear this in mind. Now, the second thing I thought about was Halal certification. Why do people seek Halal certification? What is it to them? People look for Halal certification because they do not trust producers, because they think producers are there to earn money, but if they can avoid doing things in the best way, probably they will. So why do we have quality brands and quality recognitions? Is because there is a lack of trust. Therefore, there is a lack of good practice in industry. This is also something we should be looking at. Third idea is, of course, environmental stewardship is quite connected to our amana, our responsibility. And one of our responsibilities is to look after our planet. And there were calls for action against climate change. There were even negationists saying climate change was a story and it wasn't real. But this gave us the opportunity to say, as soon as the flight stopped and everything stopped, we could see how nature recovered. So there is a real impact of our activities on nature. So we have to limit our activities. Hardest thing to say. What else I thought about when all this disruption happened? Countries need each other. This is also something that came to the forefront. Countries need each other means we have to foster cooperation and de-escalate confrontation. Now, having said that, it's not in our hands as halal certifiers, of course, but we travel a lot and we listen a lot to other people. And I think it's time for a call for more cooperation, particularly amongst OIC members, Islamic countries. And I think cooperation has many sides. So not only in trade or not only in health issues or environmental issues, but we can foster cooperation in many sides. Then what happened with this pandemic? We didn't see it coming, and we were not able to guess the impact that was going to have on the whole planet, because suddenly everything stopped. People were dying. Some countries were following one policy. We followed the lockdown policy for almost 3 months. We have been in lockdown with some ability to move across the country, but generally people have stayed at home, which means on the one side, of course, they protected themselves from the health perspective, but also the demand for products was capped. People were not going out and they were not spending. So what happened? Our economic model is very fragile. It's based on a day-to-day expenditure, and maybe we can reconsider these disruptions, how bad the effect they can have on our societies and our trade. So we should have to think about other ways of engaging into fair trade, and also the idea that we cannot live day to day. We have to consider prevention, and prevention means we need to have a stock of wealth or stuff or things. When something as disruptive as this happened, then we would be prepared. And also what happens, the consumers are the ones driving the demand. Even though companies have the products there, they cannot sell them. Consumers are not in the shops are closed. So consumers are realizing they have some power, and they have the power to demand specific products. And this is again aligned with the need for Muslims to request halal products, because that's the right first, and they have to realize their power and their potential. So I'm going to go very quickly about how I developed these ideas, because I don't think we have much time. So if we can go to this slide.
You have 3 minutes.
Sorry, Amy?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Just some ideas. First, the idea of halal. We have to defend that halal is a way of life to protect our health. We never championed this idea. We didn't. We are silent. You know, in Europe, Muslims are not bringing the flag of halal and saying, you see, if you didn't eat these sort of animals, or you didn't have this practice, you will be taking better care of yourself. Now, if you would go to the next one, you know, can we go? Yeah, this one. Improving trade and industrial practice. This is also necessary. We have seen how fragile our system is. And we have seen, for example, relocation. In Spain, a lot is manufactured in Asia. And suddenly, when we needed protective equipment, we didn't have any. The only manufacturer was China. So we need to consider what are our strategic industries and bring some of them back to be produced in our countries. Many things have to be reconsidered from the industrial perspective, particularly in Europe. We can go to the next one. I'm just going to go quickly through the ideas because you will be able to read the slides later. Can we go to the next? Ibn Arabi? Hello. Thank you. Okay. Well, the environment is another pillar that we have to consider. And this is connected to the way we live, how we travel, what is our impact when we travel, how we consume. We were talking before about sheep going up and down the planet. We export sheep to Saudi Arabia, to Algeria, UK imports sheep from New Zealand all the way. We have to look into this. I mean, imagine the amount of energy and the amount of pollution connected with all of this global trade and traveling. Also, we have realized how important the first sector is: agriculture, farming, fishing. So we also need to protect these sectors if we have the conditions in our country, of course. But in the end, and this is my conclusion, the problem is this idea of healthy recovery is like, we have this opportunity to think about this, but there is no leadership at the global level. Not many organizations have picked up the idea. Now the pandemic is receding in many countries, so maybe this opportunity will be lost, because we have been focusing on the day-to-day how to solve this, but we are not really focusing on the big teachings of this pandemic. So we will see, only time will say if we are going to transform this crisis into an opportunity. And that's it for me, Emmy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barbara. I think you left us on a very interesting matter to consider, which I think we'll bring up right at the end after Adnan gives his presentation. I want to go back to the UK, where Rizwan is waiting for us very patiently. Rizwan is with Euroquality Lamps, and I'm hoping that he will speak a little bit about what a healthy recovery would look like for Euroquality Lamps post-COVID-19. But Rizwan, take us through your presentation. Tell us a little bit about Euroquality Lamps and how you're doing. I know before we came online, you're giving us a brief look at how the business has been doing during the pandemic, and then for Eid as well. We have another Eid coming up, so hopefully business will pick up again. But I'll let you tell us how all of that is shaping up, and if you are indeed thinking of doing things differently from how you were doing it before the pandemic struck. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Amy, and assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's great to be here today. If you just go on to the next slide, please. So yeah, just it's always useful to know a little bit about the speaker. So just to provide a bit of context. So EQL is the largest Muslim-owned lamb slaughterhouse in Europe. We're based in Shropshire, which is in England, near the Wales border. To give a bit of context, the UK is the biggest sheep producer in Europe. It's the third biggest exporter in the world after New Zealand and Australia. And in Wales, which we're on the border of, has about a third of the population of sheep in the UK. We have a lot of hills and mountains in Scotland and Wales, which are very suited for lamb. So our business established originally 1992, family is originally from Pakistan, but we've been in the meat trade since the 70s, involved in the Republic of Ireland, where I was actually born. And that's where we picked up the trade, both on the lamb side and on the beef side. Our business is a 60 million plus turnover on the meat side. We have other business interests in property and other things as well. But our main focus is really exporting to Europe, and primarily France, but also Germany, Italy, Belgium, Portugal. And we do 35% of our trade here locally in the UK. Myself, I'm son of the founder. My dad and my uncle started up. I'm currently the MD. Professionally, I'm an accountant, but I also, coming back into the business, needed to understand technically what's happening in the business. So I did a MSc in meat science and technology. And ever since then, trying to marry up both the business side and if you like, the technical side of the food production, and also halal as well. We did a lot of research on the halal fix side. On our website, we have a list of all the Quranic ayats and hadiths to do with halal. So I've been involved with different organizations in the UK at the industry level with AHGB, Beef and Lamb, with the farming sector. I've also been invited at the government level with parliamentary groups to speak about halal PR issues, halal regulatory issues, etc. So that's just to give a bit of a background as to the organization and myself. If you just go on to the next page there, please. So what actually happened here in the UK? I know everyone here is from around the world, so it's always useful to provide a local context. But in the UK here, first cases end of Jan, and very much we were thinking that this is going to be a Chinese problem. We being the sort of the country, and then as cases increased and in middle of February onwards, it started to then become more serious. The first UK death happened in March. Now, from a consumer perspective, because we being a food producer, what we noticed in the immediate aftermath was effectively boom and bust situation. We had panic buying, stockpiling in the week commencing 16th of March, when there was talk about UK going into a lockdown or a partial lockdown, and we had a lot of queues, a lot of people. We've all seen the scenes where people were fighting over toilet paper and things like that, thinking that product will run out. The reality is that the supply chains, there was enough product there for everyone, but what we couldn't cope with was logistics, getting the product from the place of manufacturing to the place of where the people were consuming or retailing it. But then we had the abrupt shutdown, and restaurants closed as well, and the UK went into full lockdown on the 23rd of March. How did that affect us as a business? We had a muted Easter trade, which Easter is very important for the lamb market, and we also had a very muted start of Ramadan on the 24th of April. Ramadan, as you all know, are also very social gatherings. Everyone gets together, opens a fast together. We have big iftars in the mosque, etc. So with the restaurants being closed, with lack of social gatherings, the trade, we were probably doing about 50-60% of the trade that we should have been doing at that time. But now, when I talk about the new normal, it really became back to basic shopping. Overall, for us to date, trade's been done maybe around 20-odd%. Again, primarily with the restaurant closures and lack of social gatherings. And I'm talking about the lamb sector here in the UK. There have been other issues with other proteins, and for example, in the beef sector, because the restaurant sector closed, there was lots of steaks that wasn't being sold, and there was suddenly a surplus of steaks in the UK. Mince was going very well in the beef sector, but then there was issues about how to get the full price for the carcass on the beef side. So it was interesting how the new consumption habits changed the balances in a lot of supply chain. However, for us, we had actually encouraging trade last week for Eid al-Fitr. I'm not sure if the same around the world, but it seems that there is a bit of fatigue with the lockdown, and it seemed that people want to try and get a little bit more sense of normality. So we did have a good week in the run up to Eid, but there's a big caveat here, which is from an economics perspective, the huge government debt that has been taken out to fund the COVID responses, and this is globally, not just the UK. But that means that somehow, sooner or later, either through higher taxes or through lower public sector investment, that will need to be funded. So there is something on the horizon there. If we can just go on the next page. So what are the prospects in terms of a new normal? Our assessment is that until the risk is eliminated, i.e. a vaccine is developed, the economy will not operate optimally or as before. So there will be an adjustment with COVID-19 safety precautions that people will be taking in restaurants, in queuing to get into shops, etc., until people are satisfied that the risk isn't there. What we've noticed is that lockdown has encouraged more cook-at-home occasions. We've had the furlough scheme and the work-from-home scheme here in the UK, which has encouraged people to be at home more. And that has encouraged more people to think about other cuisines and think about, a lot of people have a passion for cooking, but they've never really had the time to really experiment. So we have seen that has increased. So new spices from different regions, etc., has been in demand. Food to go and convenience food, that has seen less demand, and we expect that to see less demand with more people working from home. Takeaways have increased, as has online deliveries of groceries. However, the supermarkets here don't make as much profit on the online as they do on the in-store, because they don't always factor in the picking costs and the delivery costs in the final cost to the consumer when they're ordering online. So there is a lower profits issue with online ordering. In our unique,
2 minutes,
thank you, Emmy. In our unique situation in the UK, we obviously have Brexit, which is a looming issue. A trade deal is really important for the UK, both from us as exporters into EU, but also we import a lot from the EU, from food, Spain being a very big supplier of food into the UK. But at the moment, there's a lot of bravado going on, and there's no extension currently foreseen. And I mentioned the point about government debt. If we go on to the next slide there, please. So what would a healthy recovery look like? I agree with the previous presenters that, you know, society will likely change some of its priorities. And I think that gives us in the halal industry opportunity, because we have the values to be able to pivot accordingly to how society is reflecting on how society should be arranged and organized. For example, some of the values, Islamic values that we have, they provide a very strong foundation to affect some of this some of this change. We have our own charitable foundation, for example, through which we channel our business zakah, and we've been using that to help some COVID hit local charitable organizations in the locality, and that's been really well reciprocated. Other values such as, you know, solidarity, consideration, trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, doing that as a business not only increases your value as a stakeholder, but it also makes good economic sense in the longer run. And the values that we have in the religion do give us the opportunity to really reinforce and reposition halal food as satisfying nourishment, not just for the body in terms of natural healthy food, but also the ethics behind it from the supply chain perspective, and how we do with the money and what we do with the money, and also from the religious perspective, in that everything is an amana in terms of how we look after the animals and how we look after our bodies. So ethical consumption, we see that trend is already there, but after this new period, I think that will become more important again, based on positive health effects to your body, net climate benefits, and good life for the animal. Final slide now, please. Yeah, so just sort of finish up on the, so from our UK lamb perspective, it's largely grass-fed from the Welsh and Scottish hills, and they're used on land that you can't use for other things. So it converts that land into a high-quality nutrition with greater levels of omega-3 that is good for our body. There has also been more research recently around of methane with regards to what's called GWP star that Oxford has done, which means that methane is a short-lived gas of about 10 to 11 years compared to CO2 that could be in the atmosphere for a lot longer. So there's a whole environmental elements that we need to look at in terms of what we're contributing to from our supply chains. But generally, if you were to visit our countryside over here, it's a great opportunity to connect people with how food is produced, but also to camp out, to take healthy walks, and to really think about how people are living their lives. We expect there to see more use of renewables to power and heat and cool factories. We ourselves are using solar and are looking at heat pumps at the moment. Also more use of natural resources, water treatment, on-site borehole, etc. And touching upon working, there will be a need for more flexible and staggered working. It is difficult in a food production environment. You can automate so much, but you can't automate the whole process, certainly now in the UK with the variety of breeds that we have. But consideration can be given to more methods of working in a different ways that's more in tune with people's lifestyle aspirations. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Rizwan. That's very comprehensive. And just a reminder to all the participants, you will get the slides in your email after the webinar. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'll go straight to Adnan. Thank you for waiting patiently. You're the last speaker, but definitely not last but not least, Adnan.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand it over to you very quickly. And remind everybody that please use the Q&A button to ask your questions. I will not look at the chat to flesh out your questions. I will only consider those that are in the Q&A. So if you have any in the chat, please move them over to the Q&A and we'll take them there. Go ahead, Adnan.
Assalamu everyone, and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you so much for the heavy lifting that Emmy and Brother Ibn Rabi have done today to host this forum. I think it's a very necessary forum. For those that aren't aware, our Saffron Road is the brand of our parent company, American Halal Company. We're the leading national halal brand in America. We're sold in all 50 states. We're primarily just a US brand. We're in about 30,000 stores. We had a very successful launch at Walmart last year. We're now the #1 brand in frozen entrees in the natural protein segment in Walmart, as well as in Whole Foods, as well as in Kroger. So we're a leading brand, not just in halal, but also in the whole natural organic movement in US. Next slide, please. So what are the takeaways during COVID that we noticed? And this is based on, we get tons of research, both from Wall Street analysts and from a lot of experts in the industry who have gone out literally and polled thousands of consumers every week for the last 12 weeks. So a lot of this research, some of it changes week by week, but it's pretty deep research. And what we found in the US anyway, and I can really only speak to US trends, so forgive me for not having more of an international focus, but of course, US is the largest food country in the world. So I think a lot of what we talk about is relevant and just cross over to other regions. But for us in US, basically frozen meals and shelf-stable or ambient groceries went up exponentially. What suffered was fresh. So your produce, your ready prepared meals that are in the deli or refrigerated case were actually gone down dramatically. They were hit very hard. But the frozen and ambient meals, subhanAllah, did really, really well. And we basically play in 3 categories: frozen meals, shelf-stable meals and sauces, and snacks, organic snacks. So that obviously benefited us serendipitously. Frozen food surged 95% to 40%, depending on the week you pick during COVID. Loyal buyers are definitely stocking up. What's amazing is 86% of Americans bought frozen foods during this time, and 68% tried new brands or new products. So it was an amazing opportunity for brands like ours to get into thousands of more American households than we could have ever dreamed of. The category grew dramatically. It wasn't just millennials, it was Gen Zs and baby boomers. A research report came out recently that said, and this has been confirmed by many others, that 56% of consumers in the US are likely to eat at home post-COVID. That's up significantly. Frozen meals were 32%, were the biggest driver of the frozen segment in US during this period. And one of the largest, actually the largest distributor to the natural food stores recently put out a report, Unifies Research, which says that ethical consumers are what's fueling this growth, which is something everyone here has talked about. And I'll elaborate on that a little more. But the basic message of this slide is that there's a big shift going from eating it outside the home to now eating in the home. Next slide, please. So these are some of the insights from the Wall Street analysts, and what, like I said earlier, 43% of American consumers actually tried new brands. They changed brands from a lot of the big legacy brands to new brands. So what happened is you had 4 or 5, maybe 5 phases now of COVID, right? The first phase was basically safety, right? Hand sanitizers, toilet paper, sundries. And then you got into the next stage, which was really filling up the pantry. And then the third stage, which in frozen was what I call belly fillers. So your lasagnas, your mac and cheese and pizzas, ice cream, the indulgent items. And the fourth phase is what we experience now. And I think this is going to be the leading vector for the next 6 months. And that is really a focus on health and better choices. So if folks were buying foods that before they were going out to restaurants a lot. I mean, before COVID, 60% of Americans ate outside the home. Now, whether that was in a restaurant for a personal dinner or a business dinner, or whether that was in the cafeteria at work, it was not at home. Of course, during COVID, 99% of that occasion was occurring at home. So we feel, while we don't think there's going to be a 180 shift, we do think post-COVID there's going to be an incremental shift from 60% out of home to 60% in home. So that's a very important dynamic to understand, and how that plays into the halal category, or even how it plays into Saffron Road's business. Another point is that Accenture has put out a very detailed study recently, and they said that 75% of the consumers are now very concerned about their health, and 46% of them are eating healthier foods. So this is the phase of COVID and post-COVID that we're in now that I think will carry over into, as we say, a healthy recovery. Conscious consumption, which Dr. Barba has also spoken about in terms of the ethics around halal, and Brother Rizwan also alluded to. This is a key, I think, as to what our opportunity is. Saffron Road has always been our mantra from day one when we founded our company a little over 10 years ago, was ethical consumerism. And I've been in that movement for 30 years in every company I've built. It's been in the natural organic category, but mainly focused on sustainable farming and humane livestock practices. That's what we really champion at Saffron Road. And I think that's our opportunity as basically champions of the halal sector, is to really lift, our amana is, as Rizwan was saying, really to lift our standards to that level and bring everybody else along to understand that's what halal should really be. In fact, Barclays recently put out a report, this down at the bottom here, that says these abrupt changes in consumer spending patterns will shift $100 billion just in US from restaurants to retail channels. That's a huge shift. That's a meta shift, right? So where are we in that equation? We need to have a place at the table, right? There's an old saying, if you're not on the menu, you're going to be eaten by it. So let's get on the menu. Let's make sure that we're part of the solution. I mean, halal brands like Saffron Road, we're championing a tayyib ethos, clean label, non-GMO, organic, antibiotic-free. Everything we do, no antibiotics ever. Everything we do is hand slaughtered, zabia, slaughtered. So we're positioned, we think, pretty nicely for the new normal. The next slide, please. So we're currently, as I mentioned earlier, the #1 independent natural product, brand in the frozen protein segment. So this doesn't include, for example, Amy's, which is all vegetarian, but when it comes to protein entrees, real meat entrees, not fake meat entrees, we're #1 across all the retailers. And of course, Walmart's the biggest one. Both pre and post-COVID, we saw a surge in our sales. In fact, Walmart was a big driver of that. And there's an interesting thing happening here, which and we're really proud of our partnership with IFANCA and USMA. I mean, they've been so helpful to us. We partnered with them, with Dr. Chaudhary and IFANCA from day one before we even had a business, because we felt so strongly about their quality standards. And everything we do is third-party certified. So we never say it has no GMOs until we get the certification from the project. We never say it's gluten-free unless we get the certification from the #1 gluten-free certifier in the country. And similarly with halal, we weren't going to do that unless IFANCA went and audited and certified all of our facilities. But an interesting thing happened during COVID, which was that everyone's so focused on Amazon. But get this, this is really interesting. 60% of the first-time grocery shoppers bought off Walmart.com or in-store delivery at Walmart. 60%. That's 4x. That's 400% what Amazon delivered. Okay. So Amazon's grocery is still not a real solution for consumers. It's really not. I mean, retailers like your Target.com, Walmart.com, Kroger.com, they actually drew in 34% of the sales of grocery on direct to consumer, whether that was picking up at the store or whether that was their retailer like Walmart or Target delivering to them. Again, that's 250% more than Amazon did. So this is an interesting phenomenon, direct to consumer. It's something we're going to be getting much stronger in, but it also speaks to what's going on when you have something like Walmart, which was always thought of as just a bricks and mortar retailer, all of a sudden grabbing 60% of all new sales on grocery online, as well as 43% of overall groceries, 3 times what Amazon's doing at 14%. So those are pretty dynamic numbers. Next slide, please.
You have 2 minutes, Adnan.
Okay, thank you. So I want to also stress that, part of what we do and part of the the ethos of Saffron Road and really is our social mission, our socially responsible business practices. I like to say we sell values for value, you know, and especially during Ramadan, you know, we always do a very strong program of both zakat as well as making sure that, you know, we give back to the community. I always believe in the philosophy of the Prophet of Islam. He used to talk about a waqf, you know, which is a socially responsible business that gives back to its community and as a result grows. And we've, in my journey of 30 years in the natural food business, I found businesses that are socially responsible also deliver higher value in terms of their profits, higher value in terms of their success, but most of all, the emotional connection we build with the consumer. So we partnered with the Kind Foundation. The CEO there is a friend of mine. They're now partially owned by Mars. They're a big billion-dollar company. We delivered over 10,000 meals to first responders by partnering with them, the M95 project on the front lines. We had also partnered with Cities on Meals and Meals on Wheels. We also did a really wonderful program with Launch Good and Celebrate Mercy to not only deliver to hospitals and doctors, but also to deliver to nursing homes and senior facilities. So we felt this is also part of our responsibility as food businesses, as food entrepreneurs, that we consider it not just a duty, but really a blessing, really a barakat that we're able to do this. And we were so fortunate. I mean, we didn't just target Muslim hospitals or halal, you know, senior centers. We went after 20 cities, right? And it turned out in a lot of those cities, guess who the doctors and nurses and practitioners were? A lot of them were Muslim, and they were fasting during Ramadan. They were keeping, you know, 16-hour fasts with no food options available because there was no halal parts allowed anymore in the streets. So our option was their only option unless they were going to eat vegetarian. So that was a barakat we didn't even predict or think about. So that's the next slide is just a picture, an example of some of the efforts that we did. And for me, the healthy recovery, when I think about it, I think it is about these higher values around halal. You know, what those values speak to, whether it's sustainable farming, animals raised humanely in the Sunnah of the Prophet of Islam, whether it's not ever using antibiotics, whether it's Zabiya halal, grass-fed, as Rizwan talked about. I would also be, I was gonna have a slide up, but I limited my slides. I had a whole slide on plant-based protein because I think there's a lot of cacophony around that and there's a lot of noise around that. And people have to be very careful because the plant-based protein market is growing dramatically and it will continue to grow, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the meat industry. I mean, in the US, protein, meat, real, not fake meat, is a $90 billion business. And you know, even though plant-based protein grew to $1 billion, it's only 1% of the business. And when you look at meals, it's only it's 700 million. So it's still a small sector of it. And a lot of these plant-based protein companies are using horrible processed ingredients and synthetics, from protein isolates to ingredients I can't even pronounce. We do only real whole food protein. The guy that invented the term plant-based protein abhors that he used that term. He uses now whole plant-based protein. And that's what we do. Everything we do is 100% whole. It's not, you know, processed peas that are smashed up and then isolates added. We would never ever do that. So I think that's another opportunity for us in the halal industries to really redefine what plant-based protein is. Thank you very much.
Thanks. While I still have you here, there are 3 questions specifically for you. And before we go, there are a lot of questions for the Halal Certifiers. You'll be very pleased to know. This is a very typical Halal audience, I see. You see the niggly issues coming up. Adnan, while you're here, someone wants to know if you have plans to export Saffron Road to the Middle East.
Well, from what you told me this morning, we may not need to, since we're already in your store in Singapore.
You're in my store in Singapore, but I'm not quite the Middle East, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's not MENA. But yeah, we are looking actively at that area. I think that with COVID and the supply issues that are around COVID, we have to wait for that to settle because, quite frankly, we can barely keep up with supply here. So it really is a matter of, you know, America is a big country. We barely, you know, really touched the surface in terms of where we can go in US. So our focus really is more US, but next year in 2021, we might explore selectively certain regions in both the MENA region and Europe that have been asking for our product for many years now.
Okay, is IFANCA your only halal certifier?
That's correct, proudly so.
Okay, that's another one then. The last one is for both you, Adnan, and for Rizwan. Susan Labadi, whom we all know. Hi, Susan. She says, this is for Adnan, but as well for Rizwan. Thank you for the data, Adnan. With seeing protein pricing rising significantly, do you have a projection for what lies ahead pricing for Saffron Road products within this year? And Rizwan, that also goes to you with regards to increase in protein prices and what your projections are for your business.
We haven't seen that surge in US, actually. It's been the opposite. Poultry prices have actually flattened to come down, and you may have seen recently all the dumping that was going on because of the, and again, like Rizwan said, it's not really a supply issue. It might be a supply chain issue with logistics. So there's plenty of meat supply. So we don't really see that. Plus, we operate in a different arena. Since we're in the antibiotic-free organic area, that supply chain is very different than your, machine slaughtered, mainstream, antibiotic dosed meat that's out there. That's really the majority, the mainstream. So that meat supply chain has a very different dynamic. Luckily, we're not part of that dynamic, but we are paying very close attention to it. So what we do is we lock up our prices. I don't think you're going to see that in the US, even with the mainstream companies, because Tyson's and Purdue and all the others, when they got stuck with the supply chain squeeze, it was really not because they didn't have supply. It was because of getting it to the supermarkets in time. Think about it. I mean, supermarkets are selling out a product in 1 week. They used to sell out in 2 months. So they're beefing up their supply, and you're going to see them coming out on the attack. You're going to see Tyson's and Purdue coming out really lowering prices to try to take share away from various other companies, not us because we're not in the meat business, but because to protect their turf, because we're about to go into a pretty deep recession. So they know consumers are very price conscious. So you're going to start to see, in my opinion, prices start to come down slowly over the next 6 months to 12 months.
Rizwan, what's the situation like in the UK for you?
Yeah, so just to touch upon that, I think generally I agree with what Dan is saying on the poultry side, but we have to remember, like globally, the population is still growing, and the middle class, particularly in China and those places, are growing hugely. What we're seeing on the red meat side is that the trade flows are changing on a global level. So there's more stuff from New Zealand, Australia going into China and those places that wasn't going in the same volumes as they are now. That's actually leading to shortages in the Middle East of New Zealand, Australian product, as well as other places. And we do see red meat prices on a medium to longer term basis going up. Poultry we still see being extremely affordable because it's very easy to scale up, but I do see red meat becoming more expensive in the longer term. And I do see the trend for red meat being more towards, as Anand said, grass-fed, anti-hormones, etc. going forward.
Value add then. This is a question that will bridge Rizwan to the Halal certifiers, and it comes from our friend from AHDB, Awal Fusaini. He says, COVID has led to the introduction of virtual halal audits. Can any of the certifiers let us know if it is an effective system of auditing? If yes, would they maintain it post-COVID? To start with, Rizwan, someone also asked, who is your halal certifier?
So because we're a Muslim-owned business, actually we have multiple certifiers depending on the market. So if we're going into France, most of our is based on the fact that people know us, but we also use AVS certification for French consumers. In the UK, we use HMC and HFA for certain customers as well. So it depends on the consumer. What we find is that when the customer or the consumer knows us, they don't need any other certification. But if they don't know us, then they're looking for that third-party validation. What we've also found, and the other certifiers may see this, back this up, is that there's some healthy competition between certifiers, but there's also unhealthy competition. In that there's times when certifiers can work very well together to try to get more halal certified product, authentic product into the marketplace. But some certifiers do use it as their own baby. So they don't want to, so say some people will not accept other halal certifiers product into their supply chain, even if they meet the same standard. And it's about sort of capturing their own market. So that makes some of the virtual audit things difficult to collaborate, but because they want to justify a presence on the site. But the risks with today's technology can be mitigated hugely, and to reduce costs for the manufacturer and ultimately for the consumer. And we need to adopt a risk-based process to sort of see, well, what are we trying to control from a halal perspective, where are the risks, and what level of personnel do we need to have there to manage those risks.
Both Asma and Dr. Barbara, do you agree with what he's saying with regards to cutting down costs and virtual audits, etc.? Asma?
I agree. I think that when we're looking at virtual, I think the question is broader, like when we're looking at virtual audits, if it's going to be something of, that's going to be universal going forward. I think that virtual audits might be here to stay, but only in very specific situations where there's, at least for IFANCA, would be very specific situations where we have a strong partnership with the organization. We understand the ingredients going in. We have it's not just going, part of the audit is not just going and looking at the way they people manufacture ingredients or slaughter animals. It's also understanding the whole supply chain leading up to the process of certification. What's going into the plant? Are there, like, for example, if you have a slaughterhouse, are there pigs in the slaughterhouse? How are they sanitizing, so on and so forth. So when we have a slaughterhouse, for example, that's only got halal animals going in, like if you only have lamb going in, and we know the slaughtermen and we have a personal relationship, we understand the value system they work with, it changes the dynamic of our ability to do a virtual audit. If we do not have that understanding, and if it's a new partner, or if there are other areas of concern, other ingredients being present, so on and so forth, then it changes the dynamic, and a virtual audit would not be acceptable in that situation. At the end of the day, as a certifier, we are liable for the credibility of the viability of the product being halal. And so if there is even a slight chance of that being compromised, we will not do a virtual audit. So it really is, the post COVID-19, it does open the conversation for virtual audits, but definitely it's not going to be the norm, and it's not going to be, especially when we're building a big part of our work is working with R&D facilities and developing new products and new manufacturing practices, and partnering with them to make sure they meet halal standards. And we're not seeing a lot of new innovation in the food industry right now, because people are not really going in R&D and developing and launching new products. It's really managing the status quo. So as we move forward and we see growth in the food industry again with new product innovations, we're going to have to go back and do in-person audits.
Okay, the same question goes over to Instituto Halal. Before that, someone also wants to know, Dr. B, how you're managing auditing and certification during this pandemic. And then after that, could you also answer about virtual audits with regards to Instituto Halal?
I pretty much agree with Esma that we only do virtual audits in very specific cases when we know the company pretty well. But in the other cases, we acquired protective equipment for auditors, and we have continued traveling all over the country to carry out the audit. So virtual auditing is to be limited only for specific cases. Yes, I agree. You cannot virtual audit a company that you don't know. You would miss lots of things. And then I wanted to comment on the multiple halal certifiers not recognizing each other and so on. I have to say that the current situation of halal accreditation and recognition is a bit complicated. The costs are really high for halal certifiers. You have to be accredited for every country. They have different requirements. They impose some limitations on the scope of products or the countries where you can operate, which is, I mean, the system is very different and very far from professional accreditation. So I think that could be something that really needs to be addressed at some point, and when we talked about cooperation before in the big framework, this could be one of the points that really needs to be looked into by OIC. OIC needs to coordinate one single accreditation scheme for all Islamic countries. Otherwise, it's really complicated. The costs, go high, and then in the end, it's the producer or the consumer who have to pay for that. So there's one good practice there that we should be exploring further in the future. Back to you, Amy.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. A lot of questions for the certifiers. Most of them are very interested to know how you do the virtual audit. So maybe we'll round that up, and then we'll send the answers after the webinar. So I think you'll be repeating yourself there. They also want to know about protocols. This is an interesting one from Umar Mogul. He says, greetings everyone. My name is Omar. I teach a course on halal food at Michigan State Law School in the US. My question to the panelists is, do certifiers and/or practitioners have a role in encouraging less consumption levels than we generally see to bring human consumption levels to more sustainable levels and consistent with Islamic ethical principles? Who wants to put up the hand for this one?
I can take that one.
Rizwan, yes. And then Dr. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to say that from our perspective, lamb is already an expensive protein, and it's a high quality protein. And we do see that eating less but better quality meat that has been ethically reared, that has been humanely slaughtered, is the right way of going about it. So it actually fits into the ethos of how we work as a business.
Okay, Dr. B, you had something to add to that.
Does it have any data on there? Specific data?
Are you talking about Rizwan or Omar?
No, Omar.
Omar, can you please send Dr. Barbara the data that you have for this, if any? Thank you very much. But does anyone want to? There you go, Asma and Adnan. Asma, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So as a certifier, we're not directly interacting with the consumer. We're working through the companies that we're certifying to, like, for example, we certify Saffron Road, and they have our symbol on their product. So we're directly not impacting the consumer. It would be more Adnan's area where they would be in direct contact with the consumer. But IFANCA does, and I noticed, I realized I didn't talk a lot about it, but IFANCA does a lot of community-based activities that promote healthy lifestyles and healthy eating programming. Like, for example, our work with our endowment with Texas A&M and working with nutrition scientists and stuff. We're working with the next generation of experts in these fields to develop a good understanding about halal is, what they is, and what ethical values go along with it.
Okay, Adnan as well?
Sure. First of all, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Omar. He's a good friend. Haven't seen him for a while. Yeah, we're part of what I call the NOSH, Natural, Organic, Sustainable, Healthy Living Movement. So we've always been, I didn't even know this, but we have doctors and nutritionists who recommend or really mandate Saffron Road to their patients. Because we're not called lean cuisine, we're not a diet brand, we're not positioned like that. But because we're halal and everything we do is clean label, we're only 300 or 400 calories a box. And so it's a really way to have a controlled regimen. I mean, way before keto became popular, 10 years ago, we were promoting this. And so we have nutritionists who blog for us for free. We have a number of health food magazines, and the leading health food magazines in the country, who put us on cover stories about how we're the healthiest product out there to eat as a meal, as well as our snacks. So we're already in that genre and in that mode. And I think the fact that the phase 4 of COVID is people looking for healthier products, that's where a lot more, I got to be very honest with you, I'm very disappointed that there's so many halal companies out there that aren't promoting healthier products. It was such an easy, low-hanging fruit for halal companies to reposition and pivot, especially during COVID, and just try it. Even if you know it's going to be less margin and you know it's going to be more expensive to produce, you may get less volume of sales. You're going to get much higher engagement with the consumer, which long-term builds a foundation for halal and for your brand.
Yeah, Asma. If you unmute yourself, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to add that across the board, when we're working with even food service operators, this concept of clean label is huge, and halal fits right into it. When we have people come to us for certification, either in the food service space or in the consumer product space, we noticed that clean label and halal go hand in hand, and that's where the growth is. That's where we see the growth coming in over the next 5 years.
We have two questions on something that's always, that's trendy right now, and that's about tech and blockchain. Are any of you using blockchain for anything that you're doing in your work?
Yeah, we do.
Instituto Halal? Could
Yeah,
you elaborate? There are two questions asking about how blockchain is being used.
We picked the idea some time ago. Blockchain just serves to step by step log in all the movements and ensure traceability of, for example, your dealings with a customer, your documentation, and so on. We have a logs-based system that was tailored for our company software. So we do follow blockchain protocols, but I think it's pretty easy to implement. And in Halal, there is a need to keep traceability of whatever you do, and even as a certifiers, I'm not talking about the production producing companies, but also as a certifiers, we need to follow our steps and keep trace of everything we do. So of course, technologies are going to help us. So we have a tailored software which is based on blockchain technology. Yeah. But this is, it's not the future. This is here already. It's not. It's already happening.
Okay, we just wanted to answer that question. We are approaching 10:20 p.m. in Singapore, and that means we're coming to the end of this. One last question, and this is moving towards the next season, the next big Islamic season, which is Eid al-Adha. Hajj may or may not happen. It may only happen within Saudi Arabia, and people can't do the Hajj from outside. But Hajj is definitely within that horizon for sort of post-stage 4 sort of COVID, as Adnan is talking about. Where do you see your companies at that stage already? That's at the end of July, which is rather short term. But in amid this pandemic, things move so quickly. What do you think would have happened by that time that would put pressure on your operations and supply and logistics leading up to Eid al-Adha and the Hajj? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, so we're sorry, I just mentioned we're sort of slap bang in the middle of it because we're extremely busy for Qurbani, and what is going to be different this year is because historically we've had Eid gatherings, and we have families that come out to our abattoir and they spend a lot of time here, and they go and walk in the local places here, and they have Eid with us. They go in, they witness the slaughtering. We have a whole tagging system where the name of each person on whose behalf the Qurbani is being done, as well as the date and time of slaughter, is on the tag for the person. All of that is going to change in that we're not going to be allowing any people into the abattoir. It's highly unlikely. And also it's highly unlikely we'll be having a full Eid gathering in this small rural town that we have here. Things may change and things may evolve at that time. Unique to the UK as well, we also have a situation around the eligibility of lambs for Qurbani, because they have to meet a certain age, and because of the lambing cycle over here, it is trickier but not impossible. So there's a supply situation as well with regards to eligible animals. So it will be a tricky situation. We do expect to see more demand because of Hajj being potentially cancelled. But yeah, we'll know nearer the time how we cope with that.
Yeah. Adnan?
Sure.
Eid al-Adha?
Yeah, Eid al-Adha. We're not in the meat business, so it doesn't really impact us that much since we're in the the value-added end of entrees. But I do think who knows what's going to happen in summer. It's all so uncharted territory. Very hard for us to predict. We're preparing for the worst actually in case there's a resurgence in the fall. But
what do you mean by you saying we're preparing for the worst? Is it the Saffron Road or America?
No, just the industry. I mean, if there's a resurgence of COVID, then obviously our supply chains need to be secure way before the fall. So just like we did in December, we loaded up and we're prepared when COVID actually happened by luck. But in terms of the summer, I think that one big change is going to be a lot of people are not taking vacation this summer. They're not going to be traveling. And so they're going to be eating at home double time what they were even before. And they've got not just one meal occasion, they've got 3 meal occasions and sometimes a couple of kids at home. So there's interesting things that'll happen this summer. And even if they do travel, they're not going to be going to restaurants most likely. They're going to be loading up their freezers with whatever entrees or other products like snacks they can get. So we're trying to think about, you know, what's the summer occasion? Is it smaller pack sizes? Is it more meals at home? Is it more cooking sauces? I think that's where Saffron Road will be able to succeed, is in that genre.
Instituto Halal, Dr. Barbara?
Yeah, we
very
were,
great a lot.
you know, Spain had a very strict lockdown for almost 3 months. Now we have reduced really, really dramatically the number of cases and the number of deaths. So it paid off. The plan now, the de-escalation plan, is to reopen international borders on the 1st July. However, this is within Europe. Now, in Spain, we have about 2 million Muslims, and let's say 1 million or maybe 800,000 are Moroccans. Now, being 14 kilometers from Morocco, they will normally go back home for the Eid al-Adha. But if the border remains closed, there is a good chance they will stay in Spain. So we will see how that happens. But then the other part of the business we hope to relaunch is Muslim-friendly tourism. We have a number of hotels and restaurants going through the first leg of the training, because we receive about between 3 and 5 million Muslim tourists of the 83 we received last year. Of course, tourism is going to be highly impacted, and probably we will only get tourism from Europe. But then again, we have 50 million Muslims in Europe, so many of them choose Spain for the holidays. So these two events around July, we are going to be looking into and see what happens. But of course, we hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Okay, Asma, you've got the last word before we do have to wrap up.
I think the summer and what we see going forward is we see growth. Like I said in my presentation, we haven't seen disruption in our work in terms of being able to provide audit capabilities to companies and for them to supply food globally. But what we have seen is that there's a limit in innovation. So we see in the summer and the fall, there's going to be new products coming out and growth for halal certification. And before COVID-19 hit, I wanted to add on to what Adnan was saying, is there's a huge awareness, even among non-traditional halal consumers, about the value of halal because of the idea of clean label and understanding the extra regulatory compliance that goes into offering clean labels. And so we are anticipating growth, to come back and hit full speed in the spring and fall, the summer and fall.
That sounds like good for everyone's business then. Thank you very much, everyone. As a reminder to all participants, we will be making the presentations available to you, and we will channel the rest of the questions that we didn't get to answer. We're very sorry, to the panelists, and inshallah we will get them to you within about a week. We know how busy everybody is. We will try and get them to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. This is me from Singapore. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague in Dubai, Ibn Arabi. But before that, I want to say individually, thank you, Rizwan. Thank you, Dr. B. Thank you, Adnan. Thank you, Asma, for joining us. We hope you'll do good business. We hope you'll do good business. Stay safe. And over to you in Dubai. Ibn Arabi.
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again, all of you, for these fascinating insights in what is a very critical and crucial turning point in the global halal industry. And like you all of you highlighted, it's a beautiful opportunity to also come together and think about tomorrow in a better way, and what are the opportunities that we can consider, and how can we get together. It's been really fascinating to me learning about your various areas of responsibility and having a 360 view really from the certification aspect of things to the business and even the marketing opportunities related to COVID and halal or tayyiban food. We've also been blessed with a brilliant audience with really interesting questions. We've had people from different backgrounds, academic background. We've had people from Indonesian universities, American universities. We've had people from the Islamic Organization for Food Security based in Kazakhstan. So Dr. Barbara, you were mentioning the need to come together under one umbrella. So I think you've had the right audience in this discussion.
Ihsan Oguts in Turkey from SMIC. Yes. Hello, Ihsan.
Absolutely. So really, really strong audience. And I'm sure whatever you had to share with us today will not fall in deaf ears. Now, if I may just share the very final slide. Here you go. At the end of the webinar, as we leave it, you're going to have a very short survey. It's literally a 1-minute survey. It's a very good opportunity for you to tell us what you thought and how we can help you. Feel free also to follow us on social media across Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Salaam Gateway, as well as obviously all of our participants. They all have a social media presence, from IFANCA to Instituto Halal, Saffron Road, and Euro Quality Lamps. And finally, really don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime. And I think Amy and I got really inspired by what we heard today, and I'm sure during our next meeting we'll be coming up with lots of ideas to share new content and enrich the conversation around the global halal industry. Thank you once again.